So you certainly got the sense heading into 2019 that it was going to represent a significant change for the New York Giants organization and really in a lot of ways the end of an era. And maybe the first hint of that was before the draft when they traded Odell Beckham Jr. away to the Cleveland Browns in exchange for a first and third round pick and Kevin Zeitler and so forth. Uh, but it was at that moment in time, more so than trading away OBJ, is you realize they've drafted Daniel Jones sixth overall. Eli Manning's towards the end of his career, towards the end of his contract, etc. Now you traded away OBJ. It's going to be the swan song for Eli Manning one way or another in New York. You just knew it. And again, this is a guy, you think about it somewhat similarly to Philip Rivers with the Chargers. He's been a part of the organization for over a decade and a half. All right, so for years, you're talking about associating one guy with the organization above all else. He was the face. He was who represented the organization. And even just thinking about it, like certainly I've enjoyed having my fun at the expense of the Manning brothers and Eli over the years, but it's a weird feeling, man. Really is to think about the end of that era, the end of the Mannings as starting quarterbacks in the National Football League. And that certainly came to fruition very early on in 2019, which, had to, I don't know what you were hoping for when you started Eli Manning out of the gate, but he was clearly washed. He showed he was washed the year before. Yeah, loyalty this and loyalty that, all of that stuff is well, fine and good, but you've got your future now, or the guy you have to hope can be your future. As a result, you got to give him every opportunity. So pretty quickly, it became the Daniel Jones show, and kind of admittedly had an up and down rookie season. You saw some flashes that suggest, maybe he wasn't such a bad choice with the sixth overall pick. Then you saw other things that you said, yeah, that's why a lot of people weren't that high on him, and especially him going sixth overall. Team overall struggled, not a good year, leading to the dismissal of Pat Shurmur as head coach at the end of the season. And you're right back in the market again looking for a new head coach. And in this case, they go to the Belichick tree and go get themselves Joe Judge. And we will ultimately judge in the future how that hire will pan out. Although, based off of early returns of Dave Gettleman's work here with the Giants organization, I wouldn't put a lot of money on this thing going very well. I'm just saying. Even when you get to the offseason, you got Eli Manning's retirement, and that's a big sizable deal. Eli spent all 16 seasons of his career with the New York Giants. So he had been a Giant his whole career, unless you want to technically count draft day, where the Chargers originally drafted him number 1 in 2004. But you get what I mean. Nonetheless. So it's clearly the end of an era. And so you're looking to the future and you're looking for the young guys that could be the building blocks for your next decade of Giants football. And then you see the crap that DeAndre Baker gets into off the field. What in the hell goes through some of these young men's minds? How dumb can you be? How stupid can you be? And it speaks to the importance of character and the importance of bringing good, decent people into your organization. Because giving them more dollars in no way, shape, or form gives them more sense in their mental bank account. Unbelievable. Robbing folks and shit. You're looking at potentially life sentence type stuff in pound in the ass federal prison, and you thought that was worth it? You thought this was okay and normal behavior for an NFL first round pick? Unbelievable. So, yeah, that happened. The team got active in the offseason in free agency, signed James Bradbury to be a big part of their defense in that secondary, brought in Dion Lewis, some other guys such as Blake Martinez and Kyler Fackrell, more notably from the Green Bay Packers of before, and then Cameron Fleming. So they spent some money. I wasn't expecting them to light the world on fire, signing a ton of guys here. But they signed some guys looking to address some concerns, specifically in the linebacking core and in the secondary, which certainly made sense. Also addressed a key thing in the draft in the first round, the offensive line position, specifically left tackle, drafting Andrew Thomas from Georgia, will be really interesting to see in an offensive line class and an offensive tackle class especially that was really good and pretty loaded, whether or not Andrew Thomas was really the best of the options. He might be the safest of the options, but will he truly go down as the best of the options? I guess only time will tell. But if you are going to want Daniel Jones to succeed, you want him to develop, you have to do a better job of protecting him. So it certainly makes sense. Have no qualms about them drafting, a left tackle there at pick 4. Kind of in a position where you kind of had to. And taking Andrew Thomas, if it works out, nobody's going to say anything for the next 8 to 10 years. And then getting Xavier McKinney, you needed a impact player in that safety position, especially since you didn't re-sign Landon Collins a couple of years back. So we'll see what McKinney is able to do for them. I'm looking at this Giants team, is anybody really buzzing about them? And sometimes, admittedly, when nobody's buzzing about you, you can be potentially a little dangerous because you fly under the radar. People take their eye off the ball. They're not paying attention to you. So you could potentially say they have that working for them. Maybe Joe Judge comes in and changes the culture. You're certainly hearing reports of him doing some kind of off-the-wall, weird, and dumb stuff. And sometimes that stuff can have a dramatic impact and effect, and it can really work. And other times, you could just lose your players totally, and it's just going to go as a complete and total farce. And, you say bring in a Joe Judge. That's cool. Somebody from the Belichick coaching tree, somebody with championship experience, but now being the head coach of your own team is an entirely different perspective right there. You're not even talking about a guy that was like an offensive or defensive coordinator necessarily. So you can have some concerns, but, hey, you look at Harbaugh in Baltimore, he was a special teams coordinator when he got the gig in Baltimore. You know what I mean? Maybe Daniel Jones could take a big leap in year number 2. Certainly could happen. I wonder how much it is likely to happen, but it certainly could happen. Because he did show some flashes. And at least one thing was clear, that he was better than Eli Manning in 2019. Especially the way the first couple of seasons starts. The offense was just different with Daniel Jones in there. And the good thing is for the Giants is you still have Saquon Barkley, your former number 2 overall pick in 2018. You're coming into year 3 now. Hopefully you can avoid any of those ankle injuries that cost him a few games last season. Because if Saquon could be healthy, he's the type of guy that from that running back position, it would not be unheard of for me to do what, for him this year, what Christian McCaffrey did with the Panthers last year. Saquon certainly has the ability to be a 1,000 type of guy. 1,000 yards rushing, 1,000 yards receiving. Saquon is the type of guy that if things go well and you are able to really ride him, could have an MVP caliber, MVP type of season. He is the type of guy that could potentially bring multiple elements to your offense and really help carry that team. So it's not all lost there. I just got a lot of concerns though. I just look at this Giants team on paper and they're just not very good. I'm still not completely, totally sold on Daniel Jones. He's got to cut out on the turnovers, especially the fumbles. You might as well call them Butterfingers because it was bad last year. Too many sloppy, momentum-breaking, game-changing turnovers, especially fumbles. Got to tighten it up. Got to figure out how to better protect the ball. Because even if you can make some big plays in the passing game or some decent plays as a runner, if you're always putting the ball up at risk, the team just can't count on you. If you can't count on your guy to be consistent, then you're in a whole world of trouble right there. When you look at that offense, you talk about the help around Daniel Jones, maybe you hope Andrew Thomas comes in and helps improve that offensive line, but you can still question how good is that offensive line. Then you could also question when you talk about the Giants, you say, where is the talent in the passing game? Saquon is really good as a pass catcher, as a back, but he's still a back. You don't want him to be your leading receiver. Is it going to be Golden Tate? Is it going to be Sterling Shepard? Is it going to be Evan Engram for the 8 games he freaking gives you? Really? Now, where are the big plays going to come from in the passing game? Where are the even consistent weapons outside of Saquon in the passing game that Daniel Jones could consistently count on? Where? So I worry that they're going to have to run Barkley into the damn ground to have any chance because they're just going to struggle to make things happen through the air consistently in 2020. And then I look at the defensive side of the ball. I don't think that defense is all that incredibly talented. And when you look at the pass rush especially, where's it going to come from outside of Marcus Golden? Now, he had a good year last year, but he had 10.5 sacks. So you got one guy that can certainly get after the quarterback, But do they have anybody else? Like, do they have anybody else? I guess we will find out in due time. Scheme changes, coaching changes could help make some of that show up. But the reality is that I look at this team and I say, compared to the division, I think the Eagles are better than them. Certainly the Cowboys are also better than them. And I also think that there's more pointing to me that the Redskins will be better this year than the Giants. I just don't see much reason for hope or much reason for optimism for the Giants in 2020. I just don't. Maybe it's the thing of I'm just being too narrow in my focus and scope and saying I'm not fully sold on Daniel Jones and I'm not fully sold on Joe Judge. And that could be it. And it could be that simple. But that could be all it takes. I think it's a 5-11 team, and I think they're going to end up bringing up the rear in the NFC East. Sorry, Giants fans. It's just what I'm seeing, okay?